Hey everyone, welcome to the last week of our series on Project 2025. But before we get started this week, a couple things I want you to know. If you're an LGBTQ person, or maybe you're a parent of a queer kid and you need spiritual support and maybe you don't trust clergy, I can kind of become your online pastor. You can go to patreon.com/Joanna Whaley, and for as little as $1 a month, we can connect all the time, and I can pastor and walk with you through this life. Another thing, if you're a pastor of a church and you want to have a queer person, a trans person come speak in your church, go to JOANNAWHALEY.com, reach out to me. I would love to have you part of that. And one last thing, I'll talk about this a little bit more. You can actually give a one-time, financial, I guess you could say, offering into the work that I do. You can go to JOANNAWHALEY.com/pay. On the other side of the music, I'll tell you a little bit more about that. We're going to finish up our series on Project 2025. Here we go. Well, welcome, friends, party people, insert whatever title you would like. Welcome to the last week of our series on Project 2025 here on the podcast. I was saying before the music started, this new thing, a lot of people have asked me on this show, how can I support the work that I do with this podcast and with my ministry work that I do without having to subscribe to Patreon? There is a creative way. There is actually a lot of work that I do for this show and for the work that I do where money doesn't come in, but there's costs involved. There's actually ways where, like, if I have a meeting with somebody and it's kind of like, I don't charge them or whatever, there's for whatever reasons, or I do free gigs or things like that, you can actually pay for those gigs. You can go to JOANNAWHALEY.com/pay, and you can basically pay people's, you can help support this by like paying other people's bills that like come with the work that I do. Because some people, it's just not feasible for them to be able to pay to get spiritual care. So that is a creative way that you can help kind of subsidize the work that I do. Go to JOANNAWHALEY.com/pay. Okay, business is out of the way. We're talking and we're closing up this series on Project 2025 here on the show, and it has been a wild ride. This whole month and this podcast series was not even planned. I wasn't even going to talk about it until it really blew up. And I definitely encourage you, go back to the first week of this series and listen, because it has been a wild ride. We have been through so much in the last 3 weeks, and this week is going to be kind of the wrap up of that. And I'm going to really deep dive into some stuff from Project 2025 and have a really open conversation with folks that are listening, watching live at TikTok at Joanna Whaley Music, on Facebook at Joanna Whaley Music. It's so nice to see you all here and listening today. One more way, you can always text in or send in a voicemail question throughout the week. You can go to JOANNAWHALEY.com/live, and my text system has been down recently, and it'll be back up by next week. But I don't know about you, but it's Olympic time, and the Olympics has been fun. I've really enjoyed watching it. And me being a good remote worker that I am, I was watching the opening ceremonies while doing my my day job. That I only have this day job for like a month more until I officially begin my my chaplaincy residency at a hospital. I'm really excited about that. But anyways, I'm sitting there. The opening ceremonies are going. It's going great. It's a little confusing, but every time you watch the opening ceremonies, you're like, what the hell's going on? But I'm watching it, and it's going really great. And there's this scene with a bunch of drag queens that comes on the TV. And, I don't really think of anything of it, and I just carry on with my day. And then on my work computer, well, on the computer next to my work computer where I like watch TV, I have like, Disney Plus up while I'm working. In the top right corner, a little notification comes up, and all it says is someone's name that I know who I used to pastor one of my old churches, and all it says is unbelievable. And I'm like, oh boy, what's Karen mad at today? What's the evangelical outrage machine mad at today? And if you've watched any of the news, if you watched any of your social media feeds, you have seen everybody just flipping out about what they thought was a depiction of the Last Supper. Okay? So everybody's freaking out about this thing. And I saw the one comment, but then like minutes later, I'm telling you, like my whole Facebook feed is just like blown up with people just outraged that the Olympics would like mock Christianity. Okay. So I'm like, what? Like, what's going on here? Come to find out, it's not even about, it's not even the Last Supper. Not even the Last Supper. It's the Feast of Dionysia. It was a Greek festival, okay? A Greek festival of the god of wine, fertility, and theater. Okay? This is like a major historical significance in Europe. So of course it was going to be part. If you watched the whole thing in context, you would see. But the reality is that like this is part of a greater problem in Christianity today. If you're just joining me live at Joanna Whaley Music on TikTok or on Facebook, I'm a queer person and I'm a Christian. But I come from evangelical circles. I was an evangelical pastor for 20 years of my life. And the continued outrage that many of my friends and family had, even when I was a pastor in the megachurch scene, was never ending. And it all flows out of this idea that everyone especially in some of the Christian circles I rolled in, everyone just believed that the whole world needed to be conservative Christians. That everyone had to be what they were. It all flows out of this idea. And every time you turn around, there's someone pissed off about Starbucks cups only being red, or, because it's not celebrating Christmas, of Target having a pride selection of, so we're going to boycott Target. We're going to boycott this. We're going to boycott the NFL, even though most of them went back to watch the games anyways. We're going to boycott the players who kneel during games. We're going to boycott this. We're outraged. It's just all that comes out of my friends and my family who claim to be Christian. But why are they outraged? Because there's this belief that culture and society must be Christian. It's this belief that everyone you run into needs to repent, turn from their sin, and just simply become a Christian. And that's the backdrop that we've created in our world. And most of the people that I've worked with in my life, when I was pastoring these big megachurches, they believe that the whole world needs to return to Jesus. But sometimes we get so laser focused on thinking that everything revolves around our spirituality. One of the biggest diseases I had as an evangelical pastor, again, I'm a trans woman and I was a pastor in the megachurch world for 20 years. One of the biggest diseases I had as a pastor was the belief that absolutely everything out of my mouth and everything that I was taught in my church was the only truth in the world. And the belief that everyone just needed in this world had fallen away from God and just needs to come back to God. So why am I talking about this? What the heck does this have to do with Project 2025? Well, I think it has a lot to do with Project 2025. And I'm going to dive into some details here. Because if you read Project 2025, and as I will today, I'll even give you page numbers. But like, these ideas come out of Christian, conservative, evangelical ideas. Because I was in pastors' meetings and I was in pastoral conversations where people are like, we just need to get power in our country so that we can turn it back to God, right? So let's dive into some of these things. In this segment, I'm going to talk a little bit. On the second segment of the show, we're going to open it up a little bit for more conversation. But there's this belief that the whole world must be a conservative Christian. And it's just not the way this world has ever functioned. And I talked about this a lot in the first week of this series. We've been down this road in Christianity. Christianity has been down this road trying to force cultures and societies into compliance with its theology. And that's how we ended up with the Crusades. That's how we ended up with witch trials in this country. That's how we got here. Because we believed that Christianity was the preferred default of humanity. It just isn't. So let me read you some things. I'm going to deep dive into some of the details of Project 2025, and I want to show you how they align with this idea of Christian nationalism and why it's important we're aware of these things. So Project 2025, you can go to heritagefoundation.org and you can find it. It's a 900-page document called The Mandate for Leadership, Project 2025, okay? On page 584 and 585, it talks about this idea of restricting and revoking LGBTQ protections. And there's 4 ways that they kind of detail how they want this to happen. The first one is to restrict the application of Bostock and Clayton, which I talked about in the first episode of the series. But basically what this means is that companies would now be allowed to fire you for being LGBTQ from your job. Any employer could say, oh, you're LGBTQ. I don't want that here. You're fired. Just like what happened to me as a pastor in my big church. But that now would be everyone would be allowed to do that. The next one would be to withdraw notices to employees of getting fired. So you could be fired without warning. If somebody outed you without your knowledge, you can get pulled into the boss's office and say, hey, we heard you're LGBTQ, you're fired, you're gone. This is written down. This is what the Heritage Foundation has laid out of what the next conservative president should do. The third one was to rescind regulations prohibiting discrimination of LGBTQ people. Our country we have a long way to go. As you can see by my comment sections on TikTok, we have a long way to go of how we treat LGBTQ people, but they want to rescind this. And the last one is to mandate biology to define gender, which I've talked about many times on this show. Biology and gender, sex and gender are 2 different things. So, I have so much more we're going to go into. On the other side of the music, we're going to talk more. We're going to open this up for some conversation. You're listening to Joanna Whaley Podcast. We'll be right back after this short commercial break.
You rose again in Christ. I'm raised brand new. And on that day, you gave your breath away. You took the highest place.
Hey friends, if you're like me, when I came out and navigating my queerness, there was a lot of spiritual questions and not many pastors that I trusted to ask the questions to. Well, on Patreon, patreon.com/JOANNA WHALEY, I've kind of become an online pastor for many LGBTQ people and parents of queer kids who are just asking questions about spirituality and queerness. For as little as $1.99 a month, you can join our Patreon community. And it goes all the way up to $9.99 a month with different features and bonus podcast content. You also can direct message me and free Zoom calls with me in an unlimited basis. Go to patreon.com/JOANNA WHALEY. That's patreon.com/JOANNA WHALEY. Join the community today.
And changing all the wonder.
So, in just a moment, we're going to open up the lines to chat with some folks. I'm listening back to last week's show on Monday when I listened back to the show, and no one told me. I should have caught it. All the commercials were muted. So you're welcome. You're welcome for that. You didn't hear any commercials last week. But hey, this is a live show. We do whatever we need to do. I want to open this conversation up. If you're watching on Facebook and you want to throw a comment in, if you're watching online at TikTok at Joanna Whaley Music, you'd like to throw a comment in there. If you want to request to join, remember, be over 18, be respectful, and let's have a chat about this. Let's talk. Hi, Megan. It's nice to see you there. Oh my goodness. Hey, over there on Facebook. Yeah, so let's see. Oh, somebody just said, no, that everybody is going to go to heaven. They're going to say God didn't cast out demons in your name. I'm not sure I understand the question, what you're saying. Maybe try rephrasing that. So we're talking about Project 2025, and I want to play a clip for you. I've got a whole bunch of stuff queued up for us here today. This person I talked to at Pride in Minneapolis, Minnesota, just about a month ago now. And this is what Maggie had to say. Let's take a listen.
I think that church and God gets a bad rap. I think that we are hearing these overpowering messages in society about who God hates and who God is against, what God is against, and I think we're here in part because we want to remind people that God's for them and that God made them exactly as they are, and there's nothing wrong or broken about them. And so I think in some ways we're here just to bear witness. There isn't one kind of Christian out there.
I love what Maggie said there. There isn't one kind of Christian out there. And that's why Project 2025 is so alarming to me, is because it comes out of this very arrogant belief that there's one kind of Christian. So this morning, I was preaching at a church in a city near me. And, you know, I don't really give out that information here online, but I was preaching at a church, and I couldn't help but think the people that I was preaching to, the people that I was doing church with this morning, were a very different type of Christian than I pastored in my old churches. And so we need to come to this realization and understand that if we can see our Christianity as much more nuanced than one person's view, then things like Project 2025 would just be so foreign to us. as Christians. But Project 2025 is filled with Christian rhetoric. Page 258 is literally talking about removing the rights of bullying. Okay? So it calls listen to this. It calls LGBTQ people bullies. It says that the LGBTQ bully agenda. This is so crazy to me. I mean, look at my comment sections on TikTok sometimes. If you want good entertainment, like a good Friday night and you're tired of watching Netflix and you want to scroll through some wild stuff, just go to my TikToks. Go to my live. Come on live one time. Wow. There's some wild stuff. And to say that those of us in the queer community are bullies when people in the name of Jesus bully us constantly. I'm going to say this, and it needs to be said. Advocacy does not equal bullying. Me advocating for my rights is not bullying. It isn't bullying. So yeah, Mary says, please don't tell me that you're a Trump supporter. God, no. I've been very clear about this on the show. And honestly, I know that there's been some folks in my kind of swirl of network that are upset that I've been getting a little bit political on this show, but I'm 0% a Trump supporter because listen, I used to be a conservative Republican because I was a pastor for 20 years. If you're just joining me, I was an evangelical pastor for 20 years. I voted red all the time. And I just have to tell you, like, I no longer recognize that party. That party doesn't make any sense to me. Somebody says, what rights are you fighting for? Here's some things I'm fighting for. I'm fighting for the rights of LGBTQ people to have freely access their faith anywhere. That's what I fight for. And that's why some of the things that happen in like Project 2025 threaten our very existence. And if you take someone's existence away, if you take someone's, I don't know if you ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this beautiful thing, you should definitely check it out. But like, if you start taking people's basic needs away, everything gets into chaos. And there's no way, and I believe spirituality is important. My spirituality is very, very important to me. And if you take away my basic needs, it's hard for me to have any spiritual experience in my life. So, and people are asking, what type of religion do you preach? I would just encourage you, go to my channel, go watch any of my videos. I talk about it all the time. So yeah, Captain Cheeto Dust, I love that name, by the way. Food, clothing, shelter, those are the basic needs. And who has suggested taking those? Oh, let me tell you. Yeah, I just talked about in just a moment ago how if Project 2025 were to fully come into fruition, like on page 584, my job could be taken from me for being queer. That's a basic need. If you take someone's job away, especially in America, we have a totally fucked healthcare system here. Yeah, I do swear on this show as a Christian, whatever. But you take away my healthcare needs, you take away my ability to eat and to put a roof over my head. That's how this stuff really becomes a problem for us. So, yeah. Hi, friend. Welcome in. Good talk. If you do come on this show, just be ready to talk with me. If you're watching on TikTok at JOANNA WHALEY Music, just feel free to hit request to join, put a comment in there. If you're on Facebook, throw a question or comment in there. I'd be happy to listen. I want to play for you a clip really quick while we're waiting for some folks to chime in. from a TikToker I really like. Her name's Erin in the Morning on TikTok. Definitely go check her out. But she talks about religious refusal laws. Here she goes.
We need to talk about religious refusal laws. These laws allow discrimination against LGBTQ people and people seeking reproductive health care using religion as a shield. And these laws, they don't only apply to doctors. They even apply to pharmacists and volunteers. A pharmacist, for instance, could refuse to provide a transgender person with hormone therapy, a gay person with anti-HIV drugs, or birth control.
So Erin talks about here one of the needs that we face in the queer community, especially. As I said, I'm not a political commentator, I'm a spiritual one, but this really becomes very, very spiritual quickly when my faith is used as an idea to take my healthcare away. And that really is a goal of people. For example, there's one section here, page 644 in Project 2025. I have many friends who are in the armed services in the United States, and they're trans or they're queer. And they say on page 644, it would force the VA to stop offering gender-affirming care. And all of my friends who faithfully serve America and your rights to say the shitty things you say in the comment sections, yeah, they fight for your right to say those things. They fight for us. But what we're doing is taking away their ability to care for themselves because it isn't preferred by your Christianity. It's just... And somebody said, nobody wants to take your health care. We just don't want you saddled. We don't want to be saddled with you. You aren't. Have you seen it? Like, talk to trans people, talk to queer people. Like, we pay our bills. Okay. Yeah. There might be some states, and you know what, if you don't like it, actually it's not, someone said it's elective care. This would be just as much of elective care as somebody who had any other physical issue that needed addressed. I can tell you that my gender affirming care has saved my life. It really has saved my life. I was spiraling down a very dark place. But because of gender affirming care, it saved my life. It really, really did. So that's another thing that we have to deal with. But I want you to hear the words coming out of my mouth really quick. On page 284 of Project 2025, and I'm going to quote this. You ready? It wants to reverse the Biden administration's focus on LGBTQ equity. I need you to hear that. It wants to remove the pursuit of equality. It wants to remove the pursuit of equality. Somebody just asked me in the comment section, why don't I answer questions? Ask good questions and I'll answer them. Ask good questions and I'll answer them. But I don't answer questions, and I think this should be a general rule of thumb for anyone arguing any side. Don't answer questions where the person has already made up their mind on the other side. It doesn't matter what I say. And here's what happens a lot of times. Trans people, especially trans women, they'll say things. And just because I'm a trans person, I'm instantly not believed. So, Vex says, 1 Timothy says, I do not permit women to teach or have authority over men. Okay, if you don't like it, leave. I mean, this is not a church. So, this is a podcast. So you're welcome to leave, friend. We're going to come back after a short break. And again, we'll take some callers if you want to join in the conversation. Ask me good questions. If not, I have lots of clips and we can keep talking here about Project 2025. We'll be right back after a short commercial break. Hey friends, can you do me a huge favor? Would you share, subscribe, rate, and comment on this podcast? Wherever you're listening to it, sharing it means the world. Commenting, rating it means the world. I want this message to get to as many people that need to hear it as possible. That's one thing you can do. Another thing, did you know that all of the music on this podcast is my own? Yeah, I get copyright things all the time, but I have to tell all the streaming services it's my music. All you have to do is go to any streaming service and search my name, Joanna Whaley, and you can listen to every one of the songs you hear on this podcast. You can also support this show and get support by going to patreon.com/Joanna Whaley. I'm so happy you're here. Join a community, listen to a song, and share and rate this show. Thank you so much.